Hello and welcome to another edition of the Blood Brothers podcast. Tonight I am joined as ever by Rob Parker.
Hello there.
And not by Sean Coleman, sadly tonight he's otherwise engaged. But we are very, very lucky in the fact that we have got an incredible author. And I was sort of blown away by your Amazon biography. I've written down a few things and I won't embarrass you now, but I will come to them. We've got Elly Griffiths on the show.
Hello!
Oh, I'm excited, Elly. It's great to have you with us.
I'm excited too.
This represents a coup, Chris. Yeah, we're moving up the
really
league table here. We really are.
We've done well. I will. So I'm just going to read out some of the things because this is impressive. You won your series, won the Dagger in the Library. You were shortlisted 3 times for the Crime Novel of the Year, a Richard and Judy bestseller, and you've won an Edgar Award, which is massive.
Yeah. It does sound very good put like that, I have to say. But
oh my word! The Edgar was a recent one, wasn't it? That was was it last year?
Last year for the Stranger Diaries, and of course it was all in lockdown. I mean, actually, I was planning, when I knew the book was shortlisted, I immediately booked my ticket for New York, and I was really looking forward to going. Of course, none of that happened. So I was just kind of sitting here exactly as I am now in my writing shed with my cat. And suddenly my phone started buzzing and I found I won it. So it was really strange and surreal, but also lovely. And I have to say, it's a very beautiful award. It's like a little bust of Edgar Allan Poe. And it's very, very cool, I have to say.
It really is. Of all the, believe me, listeners, I'm not turning my nose up at any award. If there's one I would really like on my shelf, the Edgar is such a cool award. I really like. And the Ned Kelly as well. That's it's like a barrel, isn't it? The Ned Kelly, I think.
Yes. And the Theakstons, which of course I've never got my hands on, you get a barrel of Theakstons ale. I mean, how cool is that, really?
That is very cool, very cool. Now, on the topic of awards, it was at Harrogate in '99, wasn't it? When Trevor Wood charged into the tent and he was holding one of your awards and he'd nicked it off you and he said, I won. And it said on the side, Elly Griffiths.
Trevor Wood, but now Trevor's got his own dagger and no longer needs to do that. Yeah, Trevor and I have the same publisher, and in fact we have the same editor. So usually what happens is at some point during Harrogate we have a publisher dinner, and there's usually a bit of wine drunk, and usually Trevor runs off with my award. That's what happens.
What a fine man. If you're going to lose the award to anyone, I mean, Trevor's not a bad guy.
He's fantastic and absolutely deservedly winner of this year's debut Dagger. So I really feel someone should steal that from him. I really feel that's got to happen.
Yeah. Well, of course, we've not been able to see Trevor since he won it. So, because of the lockdown. So don't worry. Next time I'm round Trevor's place, I'll pop it in a bag for you.
You owe me.
Yeah. Yes, I owe you. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. While we're on the sort of, we started with the Edgar there, but I must say I love the American artwork for this latest series with Harbinder Kaur. I just love the American editions are so beautiful.
They're so interesting, aren't they? I love them too, but they're very, very different. In fact, the Postscript Murders had the most beautiful British cover. It was gorgeous. It was red and green. It was quite Christmassy.
Right there.
Oh yeah, Rob's holding up now. It does look very gorgeous.
It came out amazing. Yeah,
came out in October, so it was a very Christmassy. But the American one is this sort of really cool golden agey look. With it actually really reminds me of an Agatha Christie book, and I'm trying to remember Cards on the Table. I don't know if you remember that cover when it has all the playing cards sort of around, and this has an open book and a sort of hand coming out of it and a gun. It's very golden agey and very cool. And in fact, the Ruth books and the Magic Men books, the American editions, are really interesting because they're so different. They're sort of neon colours and this kind of like sort of almost cartoony. They're so different, but they're really, really cool, I have to say.
I'd say, yeah, I love them. There's not a market. I wanted there to be a market. I really want there to be a market because I really love book art, and it gets me so excited. Cover reveals and stuff like that really get me buzzing. And it's not like you can buy covers to have on your wall, is it? Not like posters, because I would definitely do that.
You're
there's so
so
many
right.
books I would do that.
Yeah. I'm now slightly feeling a little bit upset that but none of my publishers have ever given me a framed copy of, because wouldn't that be cool to have the cover art? Be really nice.
That's what Sean does for me.
Really?
Yeah,
that's
it.
wonderful. You still, Sean. Well done.
Yeah. I must admit, whenever I've got I get sent an early thing, an early cover, I check, and I see, like, is this about final? And then I don't tell them, but I get it done up in A3 or A2 so that I've got it then, like as a little reminder. So I've actually got a cover up in my office here that hasn't been revealed to anyone, and it isn't for another month or so. Yeah. So but I like having those things around, like inspiration as well. Like anything that inspires is great. So on that topic, this is why the Postscript Murders was to hand, because I like having books around that give you just that leg up mentally, like, because like you say, it's such a classy delivery of a hardback that it's stunning, isn't it?
Yeah. It does. People don't, I suppose, when I was young, you collected sort of LP covers and things like that. I suppose young people don't do that now. And you think of those really classic covers, it's a shame, isn't it?
Really is, because some covers just live forever, don't they? And then you end up buying them, and sometimes I'm too scared to even open the book because I don't want to crease it. I just want to keep it and look at it.
The Nighthawks came out last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 4th of February it came out. Yeah.
Please, could you tell us and the listeners a little bit about it and what it's about?
Yes, of course. It's book 13 in the Dr. Ruth Galloway series. And I'm just quickly going to say to you that 13 is a lucky number in Italy. So I'm thinking of it as a lucky book. And so it's 13 in the series. And it starts when a group of metal detectorists are called the Nighthawks. And of course, Nighthawks is a pejorative term sometimes given to metal detectorists, sort of unlicensed metal detectorists. This group are quite legitimate, but they're also a little bit weird. So it starts when a group of metal detectorists find a body on a beach. And on the same beach, a Bronze Age body has been found. So Ruth is called in to look at the Bronze Age body, and DCI Nelson is called in to look at the other body. And they both get drawn into the case, which involves a very sinister farmhouse called Black Dog Farm, which also allowed me to explore the wonderful Norfolk legend of Black Shuck, which is a black dog that appears to you. And I think there are similar legends around the country, including that region of the country known to people like me from Brighton as the North. I think there is I think it's the Guy Trash is the black dog in the North, and he actually appears was referenced in Jane Eyre. So a lot of places in the country have this legend of a black dog that appears to you, and it's always basically a bad sign when Black Shuck pops up, because it either usually means you're going to die or someone's going to die. Although in my book I do explore the other explanations, one that he's just a companion who might appear to you in times of need. So there are other explanations, but yes, I had a great deal of fun in this book with very spooky Norfolk legends, and I do wonder if this book was written entirely in lockdown, and I do wonder if I'm just missing Norfolk. And I kind of piled every Norfolk legend I could find including the Sheringham Mermaid and the Norfolk Nessie, which is a very little known legend of the Norfolk sea serpent. So they're all in this book.
That's
very cool.
Amazing. Yeah, that something that we've spoken about in the past, Elly. When I've collared you, I remember collaring you the first time I met you and saying, I love Norfolk. I grew up going down to Norfolk 3 times a year. There is something about that area and environment that just is heaven for me. I don't know, it's that proximity to nature, the pace of life down there, that sense of myth and legend, and the rivers carving through it. I just love it all. But your background, I assume, therefore, is Norfolk?
No, not really. But you're absolutely right. It is a most special part of the country. But I do have a link to it, and that my aunt lived in Norfolk until very recently. In fact, my grandmother did too. My aunt lived there. And we used to spend a lot of time when I was a child. We'd have a holiday there basically every year. And my Auntie Marge had a boat, and we used to spend these lovely times drifting along the Norfolk Broads on Marge's boat, and she'd basically have one hand on the tiller and one on a gin and tonic, because as she always told us, gin and tonic slimming. But she also was, as well as good taste in gin, she was very good at the stories. She used to tell these stories about there's a bridge, you might know it, Rob, Acle Bridge. And
Yes,
you go onto Acre Bridge in the boat, and moisture would drop down, and the idea was that moisture would drop in your boat and you think it was water, but on the other side you'd see it was blood, so there's all these myths and the legends of the voices calling from the sea, and there's the Grey Lady of Tombland. There are so many Norfolk legends, and I think it is because Norfolk's basically been inhabited for a very long time. And the heroine of Ruth Galloway books, Ruth, is an archaeologist. And it's an absolute haven for archaeologists because, in fact, the oldest human footprints outside Africa were found at Haysborough in Norfolk. It's just been inhabited for a long time. So there are lots of bodies there, lots of bodies and lots of treasure and lots of things to be discovered by those metal detectorists. So it really is, it's a very rich, and as you said, Rob, there's so many of these legends, and I think because people tend to, it's kind of on the very eastern edge of the country, isn't it? People sort of tend to go there and stay there. So people live there a long time, families, generations, and there's a very strong folk memory, and people know these wonderful legends. So whenever I go to Norfolk, which obviously now I do a lot for research and to do events and things, there's always somebody who comes up and, oh, amazing legend. In fact, there's a wonderful podcast called Weird Norfolk, which you should look up.
Is there?
It's so fantastic.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
From two amazing women. And there's one legend that I really want to get in the book where it was a village where suddenly a hole appeared in the village. Just suddenly a hole appeared in the ground. And the next day, the vicar was found dancing around it naked. So it was obviously some sort of link to the underworld or something, but I've got to get that into a book. But everywhere you go, there's a mysterious thing or a naked vicar. Really, everywhere.
I can't imagine the Norfolk Tourist Board picking up on that and deciding, how can we work this into the program?
I should lead the Ruth Galloway tour, and it would include that place as well.
Yes.
My goodness, there are just endless legends and little heighter sprites. I don't know how to describe it. These little creatures who live in the tunnels under Blakeney. And they're like little spidery creatures, and they can steal children. I mean, you can't go wrong with a story like that.
No, that kind of such fertile ground for stories, isn't it? For your own stories to explore with 13 Ruth books as well. That's amazing. I mean, what was there a moment when you knew that Ruth, because that's like transcendent levels, isn't it? You've tapped into something that people really enjoy and have latched onto. And was there a moment where oh wow, this is going well? Is there a moment throughout the 13 when you can pinpoint it?
It has been a wonderful surprise to me that people have taken to the book so strongly and taken to Ruth as well. And for the first book, the first one's The Crossing Places, for those who haven't read them. The first one's The Crossing Places. And I only had a one book deal. I didn't know that there would be any more. I did kind of cunningly leave it on a sort of bit of a cliffhanger. Hopefully there would be another one. And I think, when I realized that there would be another one, and that people then, it was quite a slow burn. It wasn't like was it like a overnight success. It was a slow thing. And actually it's partly why I'm always so indebted to librarians and booksellers, particularly sort of independent bookshops like Gerald's in Norwich, who sort of took it up and sort of hand sold it and said, librarians would say, if you like Hank Cleves, I think you'd like, Elly Griffiths. And that was a very slow thing. But I think it was probably about sort of book 3 or 4, I thought, oh wow, people do seem to really like Ruth, and I might be able to do quite a few of these, because I always knew in my head that there was kind of a long story. And I was just talking with you, Rob, about your brilliant book and how I hoped there would be more, and you said you thought there might be a trilogy. I hope I'm not giving too much away here, but you kind of hope there is a long story, don't you? But you just hope you're going to be allowed to tell it, really.
Yeah, and Norfolk has responded as well, because everywhere I go, I still go 3 to 4 times a year with my family, and reintroducing, taking my own children now to Norfolk has reinvigorated my own love for the area, and seeing the wonder in their faces and telling them the stories. I wind them up about Pike all the time, because they were for me just so exciting. This peaceful water, and those big monsters live under there. It's always intoxicated me. But every gift shop I go to and every supermarket I go to, there is a section dedicated to you. Seriously, there is. And there's, more often than not, there's a book about Black Shuck next to it.
I know.
I know.
Does get everywhere, but I think it was one of the proudest moments of my life when I was followed on Twitter by Chroma Peer. And I thought, wow, I've made it, and but it is wonderful. And it's a big compliment, really, because although I know Norfolk well, and my grandmother was from there. I was brought up in London and Brighton, so I'm not native Norfolk. So it feels a real compliment to see the books there and to sort of feel that they are now part of that wonderful history and that wonderful, Norfolk heritage. It does feel very. I do feel very lucky.
That sense of heritage is correct, actually, because they're in places of like what's the word? Like national interest, like I see them at national heritage sites and stuff like that. You have woven into the fabric there. I never thought about it, but it is absolutely the truth.
And it feels wonderful because you consider Cly Marshes. I never know what to say, Clay or Cly. Sorry, but I think because there's something called the Cly Spy. I'm going to say Cly anyhow. So Cly Marshes bird sanctuary comes into the books, and when I went there to do an event last year, and it was so wonderful, and so it felt really sort of surreal because it's in the books. Ruth goes there, and now I'm there. Now my books are there, and it was just it was wonderful. I was able to talk to people with that wonderful sort of marshland in the background, so it really did feel very, very special, I have to say.
Oh, I'm so glad. I hope, I'm going to write. I'd keep writing about Norfolk myself. My only contribution so far to it is wearing shirts from Latham's in Potter Heigham on podcasts.
Another good thing to follow on Twitter is Potter Heigham Bridge. Do you know?
Yes, yeah.
I
spent the actual bridge.
Yeah, I've been underneath it. It's a tight fit. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. I've gone off into a Norfolk.
You're absolutely fine.
We've gone away to Norfolk. Yes.
Can I ask, after 13 Ruth books and loads of others, does it get easier or not?
I sort of laughed there. No, not in my experience. Well, I suppose there's a bit of both. And I suppose, for anyone who writes a series, I think it's a little easier in that you have the characters there and you have a sort of background. But for the same reason, it's kind of difficult because you have restrictions that you've set yourself. And I can't suddenly at book 14 decide that Ruth is, an unreliable narrator. I can't suddenly decide that. Or perhaps I could, but you've set your own boundaries, really. So that, and also I do find, because people now do seem to really like Ruth and respond to her, I now feel a bit of pressure that people are going to like the books enough, and particularly this year. I think we've all felt that, haven't we? That books have been so special to people, and people are waiting. And obviously, I knew that, became clear that this book would come out in lockdown, and talked with my publishers, and that we were totally agreed that we were not going to delay it because there were people looking forward to it. And it's so precious at this moment, isn't it, having something to look forward to? So I did feel that pressure very much with this book, that people might be looking forward to it. And it's so lovely, and I'm sure you both had this experience too. It's so lovely when people read it, but then they say, "So when's the next one coming?" And you think,
yeah,
and yours is already up for pre-order. I saw today for next February.
Please don't tell me that, Chris. That's so stressful. But I'm writing it, everybody. I'm writing it. I'm slightly, because I haven't been able to sort of, do any touring or anything. I am slightly further ahead than I would be normally. So I am writing it, but oh my goodness, it's so stressful.
Is that pressure?
Yeah.
It doesn't exist yet. It's in my head. Oh my goodness.
Oh my! Well, there's nothing like that to make you think. Oh, it's going to be real. That it's going to be real. Yeah.
Yes. Hurry up with it. Okay.
How's it going? Sorry, Chris.
So I was just going to say, there's also one coming out in September. Is that right?
Thank you, Chris. Very well remembered. Yes. So in September, there's The Midnight Hour, which is book 6 in the Brighton Mysteries, which is the other series I write. starts off in the 1950s, set in sort of theatrical world about a magician. And now we're in the 60s. So this new book is set in 1965. And it's actually set in Rottingdean, which is really near where I live. I live just outside Brighton. And Rottingdean, for those who don't know, is this very cute little village, but it has a very interesting history. Rudyard Kipling lived there, also Burne-Jones, and it was a very interesting little place. But there was a hotel there called Tudor Close Hotel, where lots of sort of Hollywood stars stayed there. And it's a very little village. It's kind of hard to believe it. And after sort of stopped being a hotel, it became sort of private houses, and this murder mystery is set in Tudor Close. And actually there was at some point a board game called Murder Tudor Close, which I would love to track down. So it's a really interesting, and there's a beautiful Norman church in Rottingdean. But the graveyard there is full of vaudeville and musical stars, their graves. So it's a very interesting and a little spooky place. And funnily enough, when I was 11, I wrote my first murder mystery, and it was set in Rottingdean, and it was called The Hair of the Dog, which must have been something my parents talked about a lot, I think. but I almost felt I was going back to that, because The Hair of the Dog, and I do think this is quite a good plot actually, is about a little village where nothing much happens, and a group of young people decide to stage a fake murder so the media will find out about them, and of course it turns into a real murder. So it was really fun writing about Rottingdean again. So thanks for pointing me. That is called The Midnight Hour, which came out in 1965. Sometimes we writers get such lucky breaks, isn't it? Out, and that's when the song came out. And it's out. The book will be out 30th of September, so end of September.
Awesome. Wow. And is there a challenge going between the two? Do you find you have to go into a different mindset, or how do you find it?
A little bit. I can never do them at the same time, so I always finish a Ruth book and either start a standalone or start one of the Brighton mysteries. So I've never been able to sort of hold them in my head at the same time. I feel like I can write one and edit the other. That's fine, but I can't sort of do the creating at the same time. But do you know, it's really helped me. So I think it was about sort of into sort of book 6 or 7 of the Ruth books that I thought I'd like to write this series as well. And I remember pitching it to my lovely editor, Jane. I've been so lucky because I've had the same editor for all the Elly Griffiths books, Jane Wood at Quercus. And what I hoped was that she'd say, this is a good idea. You can do a Ruth one year and a Brighton mystery the other year. And actually what she said was, this is a good idea. You can do 2 a year. So that's what I've been doing. But I did find it really helped with the Ruth book. So when I'm writing a Brighton mystery and I'm in that world of the 1950s, and now there are 2 very strong women characters, sort of the main characters in it, and but it's a time when women police officers still couldn't drive police cars, and it's a whole different world. So when I'm in that world, and of course no DNA, no internet, those things, which is rather good fun. When I'm in that world, I'm sort of quite keen to get back to Ruth. When I'm writing Ruth, I'm quite keen to get. So it has. I think it's really helped me. Actually, it's really helped me not lose. Not lose interest in Ruth, or to keep the enthusiasm going for both of them.
That's great. And sorry, Rob, I realise now I am going off on one, but.
Give over, man.
We talked to Mark Billingham 2 weeks ago, and he was saying that he doesn't keep a track of characters or things. So, and that he was saying like people have got in touch to say that person's eyes were blue in book 4. But do you have like a thing that you keep track of? Are you fairly like regimented, or do you just go with it?
Well, I remember hearing Mark say that, actually, saying that he relied on other people to tell him things like that. I wish I had from the beginning. That would have been a really good idea to keep but I do. So I have a sort of longhand notebook. Got it next to me here now. And the front of each one, I write down when everyone was born and when they, had children. And so I do try and keep track of that. I've got quite a good memory for that. But sometimes things do happen. So in the Night Hawks, I've got a character called Neil Topham. And I must have some point thought to myself, that's a good name. Wow, Neil Topham, yeah. Put him in the book. And when the book came out, readers, who are so much better than writers sometimes, say, oh, that's really interesting because there was a Neil Topham in book 4. Are they related? Oh, that's why it seemed a really good name because I totally used it before. And I don't know if there's a real Neil Topham, but obviously I've used him twice in crime novels. So sorry if there is. And equally in the Brighton Mysteries, I got a character called Bob Willis. Obviously, neither Jane or I are cricket fans because when my brother-in-law read the book, he said, "What, Bob Willis, like the famous cricketer?" I thought, oh, it did seem a really, really good name. Seemed like a name somebody would have, and that's why, because somebody has it. So, yeah, there are still some things you can trip up on.
Well, is there any, and forgive me if I've missed this, but is there any universe connection between because they've changed name, haven't they? They were the Mephisto.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. So I don't confuse things. What are they called now? It's the mystery.
So we're now calling them the Brighton Mysteries, partly because as it's gone on, they've sort of a bit left the theatrical world, and also they're not about Stevens and Mephisto so much as about two women called Holmes and Collins. So yes, so they've sort of changed their name, but no. There isn't any link between them. And I sometimes think, would it be too self-indulgent for Ruth to see a poster for Max Mephisto's magic show? I also write a children's series, Murder Mystery for Kids, because why shouldn't they enjoy good murder, called A Girl Called Justice. And I used to love going around to schools, actually, when such things were allowed, and because kids are such a great audience. And one of the first things I was asked when I sort of said, I've written this book, but I also write for adults, and sort of talked about that. And that one of the first questions from this little boy was, he said, "Oh, could Justice be Ruth's grandmother?" And I thought, she could. I don't think she is.
Oh, it's so
but
cool.
She's so good.
I love that, and I love, like you were saying about the how clever audiences at picking things up and living in that world that you've created. I suppose in a lot of ways the ultimate compliment. Chris, my daughter is a devotee of the Justice books. My 10-year-old, she is, yeah, and she cites them. I mean, because I'm her dad, I get to guide a little bit about what she reads, so I have a little bit of a hand in funneling her along, but she's got so into her reading in the last sort of year and a half, 2 years, that it inspired her to write her own. So I did a little cover for her. So this is
that's beautiful.
Thank you. No, this is Clara Wanter and the Night Sky Raiders. Quite a bit of a Harry Potter influence going on here. But so she said to me, "Daddy, I really enjoy reading these books, and I want to write something myself." And I said, "Oh, sweetheart, go for it. Whatever you want, go for it. Just enjoy." Well, she came to me and she said, "I've done it." This was 2 weeks later, and it was 11,000 words.
Wow! Oh my God! Wow! She's a writer already, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. Yeah, and I've not done anything. So you are one of the reasons she's done that.
Oh,
so
wow!
Thank you. As an influence, So yeah.
Well,
it's amazing.
Do tell her, Rob, that there's a new Justice book this year. It's called The Ghost in the Garden, and I'll make sure she gets an early copy.
Oh, that's so unbelievable. You won't. I mean, the fact that I can tell other authors about what she's written, she finds mind blowing. But to hear that will blow her mind to.
Oh, definitely.
Fact, after this, I might
do another. Absolutely.
Thank you. I think after this, I might go and get her out of bed to tell her. She'll be that
excited. There's a girl at school. I'm a teacher, and there's a girl in year 6 who she found out about me writing crime. So we talk about like children's crime books and stuff, and she mentioned reading yours, and I said, "Oh, I'm talking to her in a few weeks," and she was like, "Now I'm the coolest teacher in the world." So thank you.
You're a cool teacher anyhow, Chris. My gosh, you're a writer, and that is very cool.
Thank you. Sometimes I don't feel it.
Actually, I think all teachers are pretty cool, to be honest. So my sister's a teacher. She's an ex-head teacher, and I think they're pretty cool.
I got huge respect. I don't know. I speak to Chris regularly, Elly, and I mean, as in like every couple of days, we're talking about the podcast and stuff. And I don't know how this man does it. I just don't. Especially this year as well. My respect for him. He knows, but my respect for him, it's absolutely through the roof. I
hope that this year has given us all. My children are grown up now, but has given us all added respect for teachers, because we've had to try and do a bit of it ourselves, and goodness, it's really, really hard.
Yes, with varying degrees of
Who would have thought,
You're making my cheeks burn. Let's move on.
Hi, I'm Rob.
I'm Simon.
And I'm James.
We want to talk about those movies. Those supposedly bad movies. Those movies that bombed.
To see if they weren't that bad after all, join us every other Tuesday on the For Your Reconsideration podcast, part of the Pod Dojo podcast network.
You can catch us on iTunes, Spotify, and all your usual podcast apps.
And it won't cost you a solitary bean, mate.
It's like it's free.
It's just like it's free.
We've got some cool Twitter questions, if now is a time to do that. Someone's knocking at my door with ink for me at the minute for my printer. My wife's gone to get it.
My cat was meowing to come in a minute ago, but I've let him in, so maybe you didn't hear that.
How did you let him in? I didn't. How did you let him in?
Well, the door was open actually, so he.
Oh, really? I didn't see you go anywhere.
I can bilocate. I'm like Padre Pio.
Right, we've got 3 really nice ones. Jonah Jones would like to know what your favourite Agatha Christie novel is.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think Halloween Party. It's a really dark book, really is a dark book, and it's about a murder at a children's party. Murder of children, it's a really dark one, but it's such a good book, it really is. And I also really like the ABC Murders, because I think that's a very, very clever little which other ones? There's so Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I teach on the creative writing course I teach on, because it's just so clever. But also a Miss Marple one, Sleeping Murder. I really like Sleeping Murder. That might be my favourite, actually. I think Sleeping Murder might be my favourite.
Awesome. That's a nice list. David Lowes, I hope I've said that right, Lowes, said, is there going to be a sequel/series following on from the Postscript Murders?
Well, that's a great question. So Postscript Murders is the second book to feature D.I. Harbinder Kaur, who is a detective based in Sussex. And I sort of feel that there will be another book with her in it. I really like writing about her. She's a very spiky character, but she's very fun to write. So it won't necessarily be a sequel to the Postscript Murders. It might be a different cast of characters. I'm not sure. But I do think we'll see Harbinder Kaur at least one more time. So thanks for the question.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And Tina has got in touch with 2. She said, first one, you told us who you can picture playing Ruth Galloway in a possible TV adaptation. Have you said this before?
I've always said that Ruth Jones would be a good Ruth. And we were just talking about Mark Billingham's one of his tactics was to mention David Morrissey a lot, and then he got to play Tom Thorne. So on that basis, I think Ruth Jones would be a great Ruth.
Excellent. Well,
you did say Ruth Jones, right? Ruth Jones. Ruth.
We'll put her name as the episode headline.
Ruth Jones.
Elly Griffiths speaks about Ruth Jones.
Yes.
So the second part of that was, what about the other characters? So have you thought, she was mentioned Nelson, Cathbad, Judy, Michelle, Clough?
Oh, well, I haven't thought of all of them. I've got a good friend in America called Lynn Sparl, and she's basically cast the whole thing. And she does these amazing collages, which she sometimes sends me of the characters. And, she, by the way, she thinks Brendan Coyle should be Nelson. I'm just saying that because that's what Ruth thinks. And that's what Lynn thinks. But I've always thought that in my head, Nelson looks a bit like a young Ted Hughes, and I've got a picture in my head of Ted Hughes in sort of waders standing in a freezing lake, and the actor who looks very like him is Richard Armitage. So I've always thought Richard Armitage would be a good Nelson, and I've always thought David Tennant would be a good Cathbad. I haven't really thought about Michelle or Oh, yes, Michelle or Judy or Clough. Though there is an actor actually in my head who would be a very good Clough. I might have to bring him up from the ether somewhere by the end of the. But if anyone has any ideas, do let me know, because do you know what? I'm not wedded to those people. So also, if any TV people are out there and want to make a TV thing of it, I won't make a fuss if it's not. It's not my card.
You heard it here, everyone. You heard it here, yeah. That's amazing.
Sorry, the sort of second part of her question was, has there ever been any talk of television adaptation?
Well, I mean, there has. And in fact, a TV company at the moment has an option on them. And this, that has happened twice before, that a TV company has got an option. And, as you guys know, that means that, they have a couple of years to do it, and they sort of pay you some money to take it off the table, and they work on a script, and they try and get a deal for it. So this has happened. It could happen at the moment. It sort of could have happened before and hasn't happened. We've got quite near a couple of times. So there has been quite a bit of TV interest. But really excitingly as well, there's recently been a bit of interest in the Postscript Murders, because it's a crime novel about a group of sort of very diverse characters, really. And it starts off when an elderly lady in a retirement home is murdered, and then it turns out that she was a murder consultant who thought up murders for crime writers. And so there's quite a diverse range of characters, including some in over 80s, and they go on this sort of crime caper that takes them up to Aberdeen. So there's been a bit of interest in that, which I'd love to see that on telly. And I have to say that the inspiration for that was also my Aunt Marge, the one with the boat.
Yeah.
Because she left Norfolk to move to the South Coast. And something about that move, I don't know what it was the sea air or something. She just keeps coming up with murder ideas for my books. It's just amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. Me personally, I'm holding out for I'm going to say call a Netflix 6-part series of Zigzag Girl.
Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be good?
Oh, it'd be just amazing, because I adored that book to pieces.
Thank you.
No, I listened to it. It was my read when my son was born in 2017.
Oh.
So I was listening audiobook, and that was the one that I really, those first formative late nights. That's the one I was listening to while you had the same thing with Matt Veselowski, didn't you, Chris?
Yeah, it's silly with Changeling.
Yeah, I was listening to Middlemarch, because I'm so intellectual. I was listening to Middlemarch when my twins were born, and it was read by Juliet Aubrey, and that's one reason why my daughter's Juliet, because that was just that book sort of really is in your head, isn't it?
Yeah, I love these, and I love stories sort of impacting and being part of real life.
That's
I think
that's such a lovely story. And I'm so glad you like that one, Rob. It's the first of the Bright.
I love that.
And it's quite dear to my heart, because my granddad was on the stage, and he was in fact in Variety. He was a comedian. So the books are inspired by him. So that's really lovely to hear. Thank you.
Oh no, that it's what I think about and this is just sort of breeds onto a more wide-ranging question, is that you sort of give a voice to people who don't usually have one afforded to them, like the people in the theatre world of of that era. Excuse me. And Norfolk doesn't really get much airtime as a place for drama and stuff like that. What is it about these places and people that makes you want to? I don't know, because I feel like you champion them. You know what I mean?
Gosh, that's a nice thing to say. I'd love to think that was true. And I'm very interested in, I suppose, like thinking of sort of the Brighton Mysteries, I'm interested in the stage, but I'm also interested in backstage. And one of the things about those books is the contrast between the sort of glamour of the front of house, and anyone who knows anything about backstage is very unglamorous. So I suppose I am interested in those sort of, also I'm kind of interested in those sort of in-between places, like sort of between land and sea, and those sort of rather shifting worlds. So I'd love to think that, Rob. Thank you. Gosh.
No, it's in that book especially. It was when the wartime deceptions came in, and it was just so great. I hope I'm terrible for giving away spoilers on the podcast, so I will.
No.
I will take that out, but I don't think it is a spoiler because I don't think. Yeah, but it was just. It just thrilled me.
No, it's not at all. And you know that they're sometimes called the Magic Men books as well, and based on a sort of so the characters in the book were part of this sort of wartime espionage group that was formed to use stage magic in the war effort. But that's based on real life, as you know. There was a magician called Jasper Maskelyne, which isn't a great name. My God, that's such a good name. Jasper Maskelyne. And my granddad was on the bill with him a few times. And in the Second World War, Jasper Maskelyne was asked to put together a group of stage magicians to use kind of sleight of hand, to use camouflage, to use their sort of skills as magicians in the war effort. And they're meant to have done things like made the Suez Canal disappear by use of lights. They made all these dummy tanks and dummy soldiers. So it is that is based in reality, but it's such a good story, isn't it?
I can't think. Yeah, honestly, I can't think how that central conceit of using stage magic in a wartime tactic. It's just bananas to me in the greatest way.
But I mean, and I think Churchill was very interested in that, wasn't he? And he, you know, he did that a few times, and to make you know, to use sort of trickery in that way was very interesting, really.
Yeah, misdirection is the
yes,
word. You know, look over here while we're doing
right.
something over there, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Please, can I ask? Forensic archaeologist is a very cool sounding job. Why did you choose that as your main Ruth Galloway character?
Well, I kind of have to give some credit to my husband Andy here, because he's an archaeologist, but actually he wasn't an archaeologist when I met him. He studied law at university and he worked in the city. So when I first met him was actually at a city wine bar, and he was there with his pinstripe suit and everything with all his pinstripey friends. And I remember him saying to me that evening, "Oh, you know, I didn't really want to be a lawyer. I wanted to be an archaeologist." And I thought, that's so sweet. Oh, lovely. So we got married, obviously not immediately, but then when we had 2 young children, he said to me, "Oh, you know, I'd really like to you know, leave the city and go back to university and be an archaeologist." And it did seem a bit less sweet, actually. But he did do that. So he went back to university, studied archaeology, and he became an archaeologist. And that was the thing that gave me the inspiration for the Ruth books. And through him, he's not a forensic archaeologist, but through him, I knew there were such things. I knew that, and at the time, there was a terrible case of a mass murderer called Peter Tobin, and he had lived in Brighton for a while. And Andy knew the woman archaeologist, who's called Lucy Sibben, who was digging up the garden of his old house, looking to see if there were victims buried there. And I just think what an interesting thing that was, that she was there paying, and she could do things that forensic archaeologists can do things like, you know, they can read the landscape. And I'm sure this is one I've often said, so forgive me if you've heard it before, that if there are nettles there, if there are nettles in your garden, it means there's a dead body. No, not really. But it does mean apparently you can only get nettles if there's been some sort of human interaction. So it could just be somebody weeing, but, you know, basically there is human interaction if they're nettles. So that's a really interesting thing, isn't it? And they can just read a landscape and tell if something's buried there. And when they find the bones, they can tell whether they've been laid in the ground deliberately or sort of fallen in as some sort of accident. So I found that so fascinating. And you're right, it's a really cool job. And so that's really what gave me the idea for Dr. Ruth Galloway.
Very cool.
Because I know, Chris, we've got to do a quick game and we've got to talk about the books we're reading and stuff. But just very quickly, we've got children's books. We've got the early romance novels.
Yes, under my own name, Domenica De Rosa. Yes. Yeah,
we've got obviously the crime series that is taking over all over the place at the moment. Is there another genre that you would love a crack at?
Do you know, I don't know about you two, but I mean, it's writers are funny creatures, and I've got so many books in my head. You know, I would like to have a go at another genre. I'd really like to write a proper historical book, all in a historical era. I've got also, I'd like to maybe write another book because, as you said, my first 4 books written under my own name, Domenica De Rosa, were kind of based in Italy and about families and relationships and things. I'd like to write another one of those maybe. So I do have all sorts of ideas, I have to say. And I maybe even like to write a sort of, science fiction-y thing. So I'm never going to have the chance to do all these things. Well, maybe I am, but I have lots of other ideas. Yeah.
Very good. Is there a period of time you'd like to write in?
Oh, that's a good question. I really love the Victorian era because I love the sort of Gothic thing, and I sort of played with that idea in Stranger Diaries, which has a sort of Gothic novel in it, which I wrote sort of as part of it. So I would, but also I really like the Tudor time. And do you know what? I have a weird, because Andy, my husband's speciality is prehistory. In fact, he sees anything after the Romans as really modern, and doesn't want to panic. So I would really like to write a prehistoric book.
Oh,
very cool! Yeah,
Bronze Age, Neolithic.
That would be awesome.
Near where I live now, just outside Brighton, there's actually a Neolithic causewayed enclosure up by the racecourse that nobody really knows about, and I'd kind of like to write about that.
I'd read that. Anything prehistory blows my mind.
So interesting, isn't it? And the fact that we don't have anything written down means that our imaginations can just go mad, can't they?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the best answer to the question we've had. I asked that a lot because I like it.
It's interesting that the things that I remember Belinda Bauer saying. She said, because she'd had a real success with her first book, and she said, "Oh, my next one's going to be about children going to space." And I thought, wow. And of course, she's gone on to write amazingly good crime novels, but I'm still looking forward to her children going into space book.
I love it because it gets me thinking about, like alternate realities. There's an alternate universe where there's an Elly Griffiths Bronze Age crime book or a Bronze Age story. Yeah. I can't remember who we spoke. Was it Chris Whittaker possibly who had a sci-fi thing he wanted to try, that kind of. So there's a sci-fi book somewhere, or whatever. I love that. I really love that idea.
And what's really cool is that in your prehistoric book, there could be a body that Ruth finds.
Oh yes, it's like a prequel, a real prequel.
Oh yes,
yes. Oh. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be amazing.
I'd love that.
Yeah. You always think about Lindau Man, don't you? The famous bog body. Obviously, is actually a victim of a murder.
Yeah. If you went back and did that, oh my word.
I'm loving this. Yeah.
This is so cool. Oh dear. I'm hyped. And we're just chatting.
You thought 2 books a year was hard. Now we've got expectations here.
Oh, I know. And just on the sort of the genre topic, I've got a horror coming out next month, Ellie. And it was just, I didn't mean it at all. It was just, like when you're writing something and it starts off as just like it's going to be a mystery. Oh gosh, it's getting really disgusting now. And I can't really stop it from doing that. And sometimes the story just takes its own motivations, its own direction, its own impetus, and it just got progressively more and more horrible, and I couldn't stop it from doing that. So it was just like, right, it's going to have to be a horror then. That's it. It's called Blackstoke. It's I've had an absolute blast with it because it felt like I didn't have to hang around. What's the word? I didn't have to obey to any convention whatsoever. It was just and no one was safe, and it just got really horrible. And I really hope people still talk to me after they've read it because
I love horror. That sounds.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. No, I didn't mean it at all, and I don't read horror. It just got horrible.
Oh no, that sounds great. So, what's your alternative book, Chris? What's in your alternative universe? What would you write?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'd like to do something historical. Because I've written my sort of main thing was the police books, and then I did sort of cozy crime about these 2 lads that fancied themselves just because they watched a bit of Netflix Sherlock, and it was really fun.
No, it's such a good premise.
Because they're just idiots who have a highly inflated ego with thinking they're better than they are, and they kind of do stumble through it and they get to the end, but they're just so much fun to write. But I think I really am interested in history, and through teaching I get to go through quite a lot of the eras, and I just always think there's something there. So yeah, that'd be really cool. One of my favorite things about the Romans, and your husband might poo-poo this and say it's rubbish, but they brought nettles to the UK to keep themselves warm, so they used to hit themselves with the nettles so that their skin would burn.
No. Do you know, is this the podcast that has mentioned nettles the most that you've ever done? So all those things are so fascinating. I always think that, someone says, what era would you like to go back to? And obviously you have to sort of say only if I was a rich person. But I always think the Roman period would be a wonderful time, to be there. And, you'd have, and even the life of a rich Roman woman was actually quite nice. You would be educated, you'd live in a lovely house, you'd probably have a villa in Capri. And actually, anyone could be a Roman. It was interesting. Anyone could be a Roman citizen, couldn't they? So, and there was a black Roman emperor, Septimus Severus. So it was a very interesting time, yes.
I love that idea that, and my very simple notion of an understanding of Roman history, but was when the empire fell, it set sort of human evolution in a technological sense back generations and generations. I love that idea that,
isn't it?
They were so ahead
for generations, and then they left. Things like sort of, glass making that they could do. We just didn't do that. And it sort of seems to me sort of a typically British thing that people are sitting around saying, there's that big villa there. I'm not going to live in that with that central heating. Oh, God.
I'll do that.
Yeah. I'm sure any historian listening would be saying that's not what happened. But it does feel like that, doesn't it? They went home and we just thought, I'm not going to do any of that.
We just thought, wow, that was a bit wild. No. I read that as one of the best examples as to why this is the geekiest thing I'll ever say, I think, on this podcast. But why Star Wars episodes, why the prequels that came out in like 99 and onwards, why the technology was so much better in those, even though they were dated before the originals, was because when the Empire fell, technology went with it. That's such a cool answer.
So clever. And my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Oh gosh, Chris, we've got a game, haven't we? We need to get
a
game.
So when Matt Veselovsky was on the show, he gifted us a game. We used to play One Star Superstar, where I read a 1-star review of a book and you had to guess what it was. It's evolved into a better game now, where I've gone onto one of your books, chosen a 1-star review, but clicked on that person to see what else they've reviewed. And might I say, out of the thousands of reviews you get, you don't have many 1 stars, do you? Very well reviewed, probably our best reviewed guest. But I've picked a person who is now my favourite person in the world. I'm not going to say her name because I think it would be unfair, but she has made me laugh today. So I've picked 3 items, and all you have to do is tell me whether she gave it 1 star or 5 stars.
Okay.
So the first item is a cordless grass and hedge trimmer. Does she like it or hate it?
This person bought an Elly Griffiths novel and then also
so she didn't like my book. Obviously, she gave it 1 star, and I'm not bitter about that. I feel she's a bit of a hedge trimmer. Yes, 5. She loved it.
Yes.
Lovely. Okay, so 5 stars. Rob?
I think this person has a negative bent in life. I'm going to go with 1 star.
Okay. So her Amazon sort of headline for this was mostly satisfied. Gave it 1 star. And she said the downside is the handle is not long enough, which meant bending to use it. So satisfied, but not very.
Yeah, well, mostly. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Tough audience here.
The next one is a bright knitted LED beanie hat. So it's got a light built into the front of it.
Oh, right.
Is it a 1 star or a 5 star?
Oh Gosh. Well, I feel like maybe 1 star, she might just be mostly satisfied with it. Mostly the light comes on. I don't know. It's mostly light. So I'm going to go 1 star for this one.
1 star, Rob?
I'll go 5 because I think this sounds like a vital item of clothing when you're, sort of somehow satisfied but disappointed with things at the same time.
Awesome. Well, I'll give you the things first. She said no results was her headline. It's a present for Christmas, so I don't know yet. 1 star.
1 star.
Why review it?
No.
Yes, and why not say I don't know yet? 5 stars. Why not be that person? Why not just assume? And who wouldn't love a beanie hat with a little light on? Honestly,
Yeah, exactly.
What this reveals as well is, Ellie, that maybe she gave you 1 star for not reading it.
Yeah.
Like maybe she's not even read it.
I did a really funny panel once with Chris Brookmeyer and Mark Billingham, who are basically just hilarious anyhow. And it was about 1 star reviews. And some of those were very funny. There was somebody who threw Chris Brookmeyer's book across the room after 2 words, apparently. The rest of it, they would have liked it. And people say really extreme things like, I wanted to kill myself, calm down.
Yeah.
I think it has opened up an appreciation for 1 star reviews. Does open up a world of happiness. I think it really does.
Also, she doesn't really like beanie hats and doesn't really like hedge clippers and doesn't like Elly Griffiths books. Oh dear.
And this is the best one. So the next one, I don't know if you can see that, is 101 bulbs, flower bulbs. Okay. Did she like it or did she not?
Well, I'm getting a picture here. I mean, in a one way, who doesn't like lovely spring bulbs? And I'm thinking the person who doesn't like lovely spring bulbs is our lovely Amazon reviewer here. So I'm going to say gave it 1 star because mostly satisfying. They just weren't crocusy enough or capital enough, or she hasn't looked at them yet or something. I don't know. So I'm going to say 1 star.
I'm going to stick with 1 star. I can't. Okay. If nothing's pleased her so far, I don't think this is going to change anything.
This one made me laugh so hard earlier. So bear in mind that the name of the thing is 101 flower bulbs. Her review is disappointing. Too many bulbs to be financially good. So there's literally no. If she wanted less bulbs, buy less bulbs.
So she deliberately bought 101 other things, only to then say, "This is too many."
Too many of them. I mean, could we say that? Too many Dalmatians, 101 of them.
Yes.
I would be happier with just 2. Surely 2 Dalmatians good, 100 Dalmatians better.
Yeah. Also,
wow.
It was 11 quid for 101 bulbs. I think that's pretty good value.
Really good value, but no, I'm
not for her.
Not. Gosh. Oh. So she likes gardening. She's out there at night with her hat.
That she doesn't know anything about.
There weren't many 5 stars that. No. Her 5 stars were boring, like I like this or whatever, but those are gold.
Yes, they really are, and sometimes there can be the odd 1 star review. That I remember Phil Rickman. I'm a big Phil Rickman fan. Read out a 1 star review once that made you so want to read the book, and it was something like. I opened this book expecting to find, a respectable murder mystery, but imagine my surprise when it was, a multi-layered book that brought in supernatural and myth and legend and relationships. I was just 1 star. And wouldn't that make you just long to read the book?
People have got an issue with supernatural things, I feel like. I think that's a lot. Like James Oswald, I really enjoyed a few of his books that I read. But a lot of the reviews for his are... of course, there's a supernatural element that just explains it all. You're like, no, it doesn't. It's
no, it doesn't. There's always an explanation in those. I don't know if you. If I'm sure you've come across Knox's Laws of Crime Fiction, which were written in, I think, 1926 by Ronald Knox, who was then quite a well-known crime writer and also a priest. and he decided to write 10 Commandments of Crime Fiction. And the second one is no supernatural element should be allowed. And it's funny that although we've thrown all the rest of Knox's laws out the window, people now sort of seem to think you can't have supernatural in a crime novel. But of course you can.
And I mean, a story's a story.
Yes,
just
exactly.
however the story needs telling. Enjoy the story. That sort of assessment of James Oswald's work. I mean, that's so. It doesn't get near the quality of what he's doing. It doesn't get near the real issue there at all. It's hopeless.
No, I'm going to call it what it is. McLean and wonderful setting and all that humour. Yes, and the occasional dragon. I love that.
And why ever not? This is a point where we ask what you're reading, Ellie. What are you reading at the moment?
Well, I'm reading a really good book, and I was very lucky to be sent a preview of it, and it's called Watch Her Fall, and it's by Erin Kelly, who's a great crime writer. Yeah. He Said, She Said, Stone Mother's really, really good writer. And this is, Erin's a friend of mine, so I hope she's going to like this description of it. It's as if the ballet girl, the people in Noel Streatfeild's ballet shoes grew up and murdered each other.
Wow.
Because it's a crime novel set in the ballet world. And it's and it's so good. And of course it's a very cutthroat world. I remember reading that the Russian ballerina Svetlana Zaharova, which I'm probably not saying right, just before she went on stage, somebody cut her tutu in two. So it's a 4-4. I don't know. But so it is a very cutthroat world, and this is amazing. It's a crime novel set in the ballet world, so I totally recommend it. Erin Kelly, Watch Her Fall.
Wow, we will look out for that one. What about you, Chris?
I'm still on my McHerron crusade, where I'm on my 6th one consecutively, and I literally have that thing where I go to my shelf and I finished London Rules last night. Finished London Rules. Went to my shelf and thought, right, I have to slow myself down because I'm going to run out and I'm going to hate it. So I picked something else up, took it downstairs, went back upstairs and got Joe Country.
Joe Country. So, He is such a genius, isn't he? He really is. And so funny. Those books are so funny. As well as being amazing sort of spy novels, but so funny.
Yeah. The black humour is just so good.
I remember there was a character and he was in a coma. Somebody says, have you tried switching him off and switching him on again?
Oh gosh, it's so good. I'm so glad because you've when we first mentioned that you were reading the Heron books, Chris, I was on London. I just was finishing London Rules, I think, and you've overtaken me now. I think I'm behind. I've just started Joe Country, so yeah, we're at the same point.
We're read along.
I'm reading. I'm knee deep in a first draft at the moment, so when I do that, I go for inspiration big time, So at the minute, I'm almost at the end of Don Winslow's The Border. So you can see where my bookmark is. I'm really nearly there. It's just so great and so wide-reaching and extremely hard-hitting. Taking full aim at the moment at a presidency that is no longer there, but it's been. Yeah,
partly brought down by Don Winslow, I do feel.
Yes, I would say so. Yes, so it's a staggering piece of work, really. I read The Power of the Dog maybe 3 years ago, and it was so hard hitting I couldn't touch another Winslow book until this Christmas just gone when I read The Cartel. So I've done a bit of a back to back as well. But yeah, super stuff. Yeah, they're really, really super.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that usually brings us to an end. We've kept you for an hour and a bit. So,
it's been so much fun. Thank you.
It's been so lovely to meet you.
Yeah, it's lovely to meet you as well. Lovely to see you again, Rob.
I
hope it won't be too long before we can all meet in real life.
Yeah, and I'll find Trevor to nick another of your awards.
Yes. We've got to go for that dagger of his. That's what we have to do.
I know. Ellie, your time, one of the most generous people in the industry. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been great. Thanks for having me.
No worries.
And we'll see you round and about in the coming months when the world goes normal.
Yeah, let's hope so. Lots of luck to both of you with everything you're doing.
Thank you so very much. Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.